in a place where it is comfortable and appropriate for you to do so, you can go ahead and close your eyes and take a few deep, slow, relaxing breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. With every inhale, feel more light and peace entering your body, and with every exhale, feel like you are able to just let go of anything you do not want. Feeling more light and more peace on each inhale, and more relaxation on every exhale. We picture ourselves on top of a beautiful mountain in the center of a circular grove of trees. In the center of this sacred grove, a bonfire blazes forth, lighting us and the grove up with a sacred golden light. We recognize that this is the light of perfect love and perfect trust, and it burns away everything that is not like itself. Into this sacred space, we invite the presence of our Creator. To many of us, our Creator presents themselves as a mother and father, a god and goddess. Into this sacred space, we also invite the presence of our teachers, our angels, our guides. We dedicate this time that we are spending together to them and to each other, and we ask that we be guided and led as we walk upon the way to become happier, more peaceful, more prosperous, and more loving people. Thank you very much. Together, we all say, blessed be. There's a line in Psalm 55 which is very important. Regardless of whether you like psalm magic or not, it's a very, very important line. And it says, cast your burdens on the Lord. And I want to use that, cast your burdens on the Lord, as a jumping off point for today's talk. When we say the Lord in a magical sense, we're not speaking of a religious deity. We're not speaking of some sort of father figure up in the sky. The Lord to us represents the prime cause. And that prime cause is the creator of all that is. And that there's only one force. And it's so important to recognize that this is the life force, that this is the force of the universe, because there is only one. And it has many different names, it has many different ways of relating to it, but there's only one. And the reason why it's important to recognize that there's only one is because then there's a sense of safety and certainty that there is order in the universe. And if there is only one, that means there's nothing to oppose it. There's nothing to thwart it. And then it makes it very understandable and easy that if we are feeling burdened by something, that this force can take it. This force knows what to do with it. This force is not only okay with us letting our burden go, but it encourages us to let our burden go. Because there are burdens that we carry that are not meant for us to carry. Think about gravity for a minute. Think about how gravity makes things heavy. If there's a certain amount of mass, gravity creates heaviness within that mass. But if you were to take that same mass and take it out of the atmosphere, that gravity no longer has any pull on it, and therefore it no longer has that weight. And so the force, or the Lord as it's called in the Authorized King James Version of the Psalms, represents that which is outside of the atmosphere of this earth. It's outside of this world. And so when we cast our burden on the Lord, that simply is another way of saying, release us from the gravitational pull of the mass of whatever it is. And that's metaphorical in regards to whatever is burdening us. And you can think in terms of very practical things that are burdening you. Just kind of think about it. What are my burdens? What am I carrying? What are the kinds of things? Maybe they're financial burdens. Maybe they're health burdens. Maybe they're burdens because you think you need to know what to do in order to solve a particular problem. And you feel like the burden is on you. And the reality is that the burden is not on you. And the idea that the burden is yours to carry is an erroneous one. And that's why that line in that psalm is so helpful, because it's reminding you that's not yours. cast that burden. Cast that burden on the Lord. You don't have to say those words if that's not meaningful to you. You don't have to say the Lord. You can let go of your burden to whatever your concept of a higher power is, no matter what the trouble is, no matter what the anxiety is. So you can just take a few minutes, just close your eyes and think of what that burden is and just say, I let go of this burden. You can just say, perfect love and perfect trust sets me free. Infinite love sets me free. Whatever your concept of that higher power is, that higher power, your creator, has qualities of spirit, has qualities of the divine. We talk about those a lot here. Divine life and spirit and soul and intelligence, truth, love, law, and presence. And there are more qualities that you can come up with, but just take one of those qualities. That's a name of the divine. That you can consider that a god or goddess, if you will. That is an expression of that one force. Take one of those qualities, like infinite or perfect love. Perfect love now sets me free. I give my burden over to perfect love and I am set free. I let go of burdens. You can allow perfect love to lift that burden up outside of the atmosphere where it no longer has weight for you. You can't do that for yourself, but you don't need to do that for yourself. The carrying of the burden is something that you thought you were supposed to have, and you're not supposed to have that burden. So start off, it's okay to start off small if you need to, but find those burdens as they present themselves to you and just keep reminding yourself, this is not my burden to carry. I can give this burden over to perfect love, and perfect love will set me free, will release me from this burden. This is not a religious experience so much as a magical experience. It's a practically magical experience. This is practical magic at its finest. Whatever your burden is, once you recognize it, identify it, and remind yourself that that's not for you to carry, and you hand that over to perfect love, notice that that's not being irresponsible. Notice that's not abdicating responsibility. It's taking responsibility for putting that burden in its proper perspective and allowing yourself to find a way to allow that problem to be solved in a way that is practical, that actually makes sense, that actually works. Carrying that burden for yourself does not solve that problem. So if you let go of that burden completely and you give that to perfect love, you notice that it works out in the highest way possible. And that's because you have taken responsibility for it. That is because you have chosen to put those burdens in their proper perspective. It really doesn't matter what is burdening you. It's very important to remind ourselves frequently that to spirit, there's not easy and difficult. It's all the same. It's all the same because it's just changing the film in the projector. Can you imagine being in a projection booth at a movie theater and you just change in the movie? It's the same action. It doesn't matter if it's a horror movie or a comedy. It doesn't matter if it's an instructional film or a newsreel. It really makes no difference. It's the same to you as the projectionist. And that goes for spirit too. It doesn't matter. It's just change in film. It doesn't matter. And so when we give this burden to spirit, spirit knows exactly what to do with it. We don't. But it doesn't matter to spirit that you think this is difficult, or you think this is significant, or you think this is insignificant, because to spirit there is no difficult or easy. When we have a burden that we feel is very important, that somehow we can't trust spirit, that we are the ones that have to handle it. I'll give my little things over to spirit. But these big important things, I think I better take care of those myself because spirit may not really do a good job. Actually, it's the big burdens that sometimes we should give over first because we perceive them as being so big that infinite intelligence can handle it much better than we can, right? But we don't think of it that way. We think of little things and big things, hard things, soft things, difficult things, easy things. Spirit just sees it all as the same, problems and solutions. So as you start to let go of the weight, that which is weighing on you, you can understand that perfect love knows what to do with those things. Perfect love knows how to handle those things in ways that you don't. It's sometimes important to tell myself and remind myself that perfect love can do all the heavy lifting. Perfect love can do all the heavy lifting. I remind myself of that frequently because I'm very good at saying, oh, I better get in there and make this work. I better go in there and fix this. And then oftentimes, if I don't stop and remind myself, wait a minute, infinite love can do all the heavy lifting and let go of what burdens me. And then what I do is then if once I let go of what's burdening me and recognize that perfect love can do all the heavy lifting for me and I let go of it, then I'm in a place to be guided and led and instructed step by step by step if there's things that I need to do. But if I say, no, I know what to do. I have to fix this. I got to handle this. I've got this, my burden, my burden. And we just going to hold on to that burden, carry this burden as long as I can because I know what to do. I never seem to know what to do. I never seem to have that moment where I'm instructed by a higher intelligence because I've decided that this is my burden to carry and I should have the answers and I'll deal with infinite spirit later. So instead of putting off letting go of our burdens, casting our burdens, instead of putting that off till later until we've exhausted every possibility, and I think that somehow we think that's noble. Like, well, I'm going to just try to figure it out. And once I'm at the complete end of my rope and I don't know what to do, then maybe I can let spirit have the burden. Instead, if we can do is we can say, well, why don't I start with letting go of the burden and letting spirit have it, letting spirit do the heavy lifting for me. And I can be then in tune with the voice of spirit and allow that voice to guide me. It makes so much sense once we do it, but the lead up to that is such a struggle for many of us to say, no, wait a minute, this is my burden. I have to keep my burden. This is my burden. Don't take my burden from me, right? We love our burdens. But just remind yourself that it's more efficient for me to let go of the burden. It's more efficient for me to invoke spirit. It's more efficient for me to call upon the divine will to take care of this for me than it is for me to try to take care of it myself. I'm actually being smart. I'm actually being efficient. I'm actually getting things accomplished this way. Whereas the other way, it's more of a delay tactic where I can prove to myself how much I can suffer. I can prove to myself that I tried. Somehow I'm thinking I'm getting brownie points, maybe even from spirit for trying and suffering so much and carrying this burden. And I think spirit would say, if that wasn't so sad, it would be funny. If it wasn't so sad, that would be cute that you think that you can handle all of this for yourself. But it's tragic because we waste so much time. We waste so many encounters carrying such heavy burdens that were never meant for us. They were never meant for us to carry. A lot of times we don't even know that this is an available technique for us. Nobody's bothered to teach us that you don't need to carry these burdens. In magic, what do? We say, I need to impress my deep mind with an image or with an idea in order to create an astral double of this image in order for me to have what I want. Well, one of the quickest and most efficient ways to impress your deep mind with something is by letting a burden go. Once you just let that burden go, once you give that burden over to infinite spirit, it's impressing your deep mind with the idea that you can actually have something beyond these burdens. And it's very powerful. It's a very, very powerful experience to just sit, think about what's burdening you, think about the weight of it, feeling the weight in your body, feeling the weight in your mind, your emotions, that you're carrying this so much, and then calling on whatever your concept of infinite spirit, calling on that power and say, I'm giving this to you. I'm letting go of this. I'm completely relinquishing my investment in this burden. I'm letting you have it. And then it's almost like you hear a choir of gratitude from infinite intelligence. Yay! They let us take the burden. Infinite intelligence then takes that burden, and then we are free. We are free to have the experience that we've been longing for. It's a very potent magical operation, giving up the burden, giving up our burdens, giving up our sorrows, our fears, our regrets, our pains, allowing that to be lifted one at a time. You got to go through it in order to let go of it. You can't just, say, well, just take my burdens from me. You got to be specific. You've got to feel it. You've got to be able to turn and face what it is that's burdening you and experience it, feel it, notice where it is, what it is, how it's bothering you, how it's causing you pain and trauma and problem. You've got to be able to be with it in order to let go of it. And that's what we mean by you got to go through something to let go of it. But you do have to let go of it. And you can get really good at this, where you look at the burden, but you don't dwell on the burden. You turn toward the burden and allow yourself to release it into the loving hands of Spirit rather than hanging on to it and sort of relishing in it. There's a big difference between wallowing in a burden and noticing the burden so that you can let go of it. There's a big difference between those two. In fact, a lot of times people think that they have to, kind of wallow in their misery a long, long time before they've kind of paid the price to let go of it. There's even therapies that are like that. It's just like relive the trauma. No, you don't need to relive the trauma. You just need to notice the trauma that you're already experiencing and say, I don't want to keep this. I no longer want to keep this. I am willing to let this burden go. And then just actually let Spirit lift it from you. And notice how you clutch. Notice how we cling to these burdens. And then we say, no, I'm going to make a new choice here. I'm going to let go and allow this to be lifted from me. And you can get super good at this so that this takes you a millisecond to do. And then a lot of these problems, they start to clear up. And you think, what was I thinking? I could have had this be cleared up years ago if I had known this, if I had known that I just didn't need to hang on to the burden anymore. And that infinite intelligence not only could take the burden from me, but it's so smart that it knows how to handle all the little details. And that I'm open and receptive to guidance, so I can take it one step at a time and take care of detail after detail after detail as it's in front of me to take care of, guided and led every step of the way. Such a different way of living, isn't it? Than, my burdens, my problems, right? One at a time, we take those burdens and we let go of them. So that's that esoteric meaning of I cast my burden on the Lord. Now, if that's a term that you like, you can just lift it straight from the Psalm as an incantation. I cast this burden on the Lord and I go free. I cast this burden on the Lord and I go free. And you can be specific. Say it's a financial burden. I cast this burden of debt on the Lord and I go free into my prosperity. Maybe it's an illness. I cast this burden of illness on the Lord and I go free into my perfect health. Maybe it's a burden about a relationship. I cast this burden of this fight with my mate on the Lord and I go free in love and forgiveness. Perhaps the burden has to do with your fear of climate change. I cast this burden of climate change on the Lord and I go free. Now, maybe the Lord isn't a good term for you. Maybe you're very specifically oriented toward a deity or a goddess or something like that. So just change it. Change it. As long as in your mind you understand that whatever that word is, it represents the force, the one, the force. And again, the force has many different names, and those names are qualities. And so for you, perhaps perfect love has to do with the archangel Ariel. Or maybe for you, perfect love has to do with the goddess Freya. Or maybe for you, perfect love is named something else. It's fine. It's fine as long as it really rings true for you and you have absolute faith in the fact that you're addressing the supreme force, right? The one and only force in whatever iteration it may be, right? Because if you think about how when light is refracted in a rainbow, it looks like light has several different colors. And those are just different expressions of the one light. So perfect love is one of those colors. Perfect trust is one of those colors. Life is one of those colors. Soul is one of those colors, etc. And so you might have deity names for those things. That's fine. Whatever works for you, as long as it feels absolutely safe for you to let go of the burden into their arms and that they can carry that for you instead of you, so that the problem can be worked out in the highest way possible and that you are open and receptive and willing to take whatever action is given to you in the moment. It's a very simple, but sometimes very challenging process. I cast my burden on the Lord and I go free. And I'm willing and open to be guided and led moment by moment to do what's in front of me to do so that this burden can be released from me. When we allow ourselves to commit to living a life that's free of burden, a lot of times what happens is then we become more aware of the burdens that we've been carrying, that we've been suppressing from our conscious awareness. And again, we let them come up one at a time. We make an absolute conscious choice that we are looking at this burden and we are letting go of it. We are giving it over to a higher power in order for it to be released and healed. And then we allow ourselves to be guided and led to do what's in front of us to do one step at a time, allowing this to be taken care of for us. Work with this idea of letting your burden go consciously and allowing yourself to be free of it and allowing that higher power to help you and recognizing that it's no big deal to spirit. It's no big deal to spirit, but spirit can't come in uninvited and spirit really wants you to be free of it. Thank you so much for spending a little time with me today. I so appreciate you. Until next time, blessed be.